On the morning of May 29th in Japan, SciADV series creator Chiyomaru Shikura held a Twitcasting livestream, which was subsequently transcribed by Twitter user K-Suka, and in the last 40 minutes of his stream, he leaked a good number of details regarding the future of the science adventure series, with it approaching 3 years since the release of the last mainline. At the 3-hour, 21-minute, and 27-second mark, he revealed that he planned on announcing a brand new SciADV title by the end of this year, particularly the next mainline SciADV entry after Anonymous Code. Intriguingly though, the intent to announce the project by the year's end is something that Shikura had not told any of the series staff members, including Mage's president Makoto Asada. This stream was his way of letting both the staff and fans know what the situation is. Beyond this, Shikura further commented that while this is a project that he has been working on for a good 2 years now, it has seen significant setbacks, very much like Anonymous Code did during its 7 years of development. In particular, he highlighted that due to the constantly evolving international geopolitical landscape and the rapid changes in technology, it was becoming increasingly hard to accurately portray a story taking place in the future, especially with anything to do with the topics of AI and technological singularity, which are, according to him, part and parcel of the next mainline SciADV entry. Shikura surmised that the rate at which AI is evolving would effectively mean that technological singularity would come much sooner than originally anticipated, and with that, about a year back, a major incident occurred which made it so that the game's whole theme, and even its title, had to change completely. So from the looks of things, this seems to not be a SciADV entry taking place in 2025 or 2026 like many of us have suspected, but rather far ahead in the future, very much like Anonymous Code. And because of that, it is facing an identical set of development setbacks and is likely still years away from release. But he commented that if you were to not announce it this year, other SciADV projects in the works would grind to a halt, so they need to announce it within the next 6 months. Interestingly, Shikura also went on to say that the new SciADV entry could definitely receive an anime adaptation, and that he was willing to do whatever it would take to ensure that it would happen, even going so far as to entirely self-fund this entry's anime, and also an Anonymous Code anime if he absolutely needed to. In doing so, he would ditch the traditional anime production committee structure and opt to be the sole investor on the projects. Speaking of Anonymous Code, he indicated that some developments concerning the Anonymous Code IP have been happening behind the scenes, but could not detail any more than that. Could this suggest there's an active attempt to turn Anonymous Code into an anime? Maybe? But from the way he spoke about the possibility of having to self-fund an Anonymous Code anime, I don't think that the project is a done deal. And in the first place, Anonymous Code is the kind of story that could intuitively only work as a video game unless they were to find some super creative solution to the save and load system, as well as having the player and protagonist being two separate entities. In adapting it, they would need to find some way to address its meta elements while still having it be an engaging experience. Otherwise, an anime would be like watching someone else play a video game. But at the very least, unlike with other SciADV entries, the source material length this time around is not much of a concern. I think it would only need around 16 episodes to adapt the full game and do it justice. And if they had to shave down that episode count to fit it within the confines of one traditional cour, it could still work fairly well. It wouldn't be nearly as bad as, say, doing Chaos Child, a game maybe 2.5 times as long as Anonymous Code, in one cour. This is why the prospect of Shikura self-funding an Anonymous Code anime is not out of the question if no other investors were to join the project. But I believe that for this to be true of the next mainline SciADV entry as well, it would also most likely mean that it would be another shorter entry about as long as Anonymous Code. And this is what I expected anyways, since doing a longer work means giving up on the prospect of a strong, successful anime adaptation. Nowadays, mages can't secure the investment required for two-cour adaptations of their works. Even in their heyday, they couldn't manage to do that for most of the series, opting to cram their lengthy narratives in just one cour, leading to poor reception and a severe lack of popularity in comparison to Steins. Additionally, for a few years now, Shikura and other series staff have talked about doing a SciADV entry entirely in manga trigger format. If this next mainline that Shikura was talking about here is the exact same game as that, then it would just end up being too costly to make a longer game in that style. I can hardly imagine it being super profitable. And in terms of an anime adaptation, an anime is super expensive to make in general. 10 years ago, the average one-cour anime cost 250 million yen to produce, and these costs have been rising over the past decade due to inflation, greater outsourcing demand, an increasing cost of labor, amidst other factors. So I do not believe that Shikura could reasonably 100% self-fund a 2-cour anime for one singular project, especially if he has to do an anonymous code anime on top of that as well, which would be at least another cour. I think all of that entirely self-funded is just not plausible. Now, some of you might be wondering whether or not this entry is the previously announced Steins thematic sequel, Steins something. And there are a couple of details in his words that could potentially hint at such a conclusion, considering some commonalities between Shikura's description of this new entry and what we know about Steins something. For instance, very much like Steins something, this new entry has been stuck in the concepting phase despite it being almost 3 years since Anonymous Code's release. Moreover, Shikura referred to this as the next mainline SciADV title after Anonymous Code, which is what Steins something is supposed to be, having been announced all the way back in 2020. In addition to that, the timing of this project's announcement may also point towards Steins something as well, with us having just hit Steins Gate's 15th anniversary several months ago, and with series staff having discussed Steins something's active production in 15th anniversary interviews. 2025 itself also happens to be a hugely significant year in universe, so this is as good a time as any to make a formal announcement on it. Beyond this, Shikura also specifically cited the Russia-Ukraine situation when discussing how the geopolitical circumstances of today have been impacting development. Such could potentially point towards a connection to the Steins subseries given how critical Russia's involvement is in Steins Gate and Steins Gate Zero. However, the whole notion of having to self-fund this new entry's anime would be a bit puzzling if you were referring to Steins Gate's thematic sequel, since Steins Gate is their cash cow. Both the original Steins Gate anime and the Steins Gate Zero anime were so popular, it's almost inconceivable that not a single investor would join the project. Additionally, most people theorize that Steins something would take place in 2025 or 2026, given the significance of those years in series. But from Shikura's follow-up comments on technological singularity and his own vague confirmation, we know that at least part of this work would take place somewhere in the whereabouts of when Anonymous Code occurs, albeit seemingly before the year 2037. So from that standpoint, a lot of people would think that this new entry is not Steins something. But what if Steins Gate's thematic sequel does not take place in 2025 or 2026? If the Steins Gate thematic sequel were to take place in 2036, another hugely significant year for the Steins Gate subseries and Anonymous Code, that would make things a little interesting. From the looks of things, scholars differ substantially on when they predict technological singularity will hit us. For some scholars, it's as soon as 2029, and for others, it's as far into the future as 2045. So 2036 is within that time frame, but we could reach it much sooner. Nevertheless, we will need to wait for more information. Perhaps we will know for sure what the situation is by the end of the year, or perhaps mages will keep quiet. After all, anytime Shikura says anything on one of his live streams, it's always important to take his words with a grain of salt. But in any case, I'd love to hear your speculation for what you think this project is, and when you suspect it takes place. I know you Anonymous Code players have a lot to say on that matter. Though with that in mind, I'll see you around Anons. Special thanks to Fasty, Maxi, and Anarovan.